Hey there, Outliers. Niiamah Ashong here, and thank you so much for letting us be a part of your journey. Today, we have a one-on-one podcast conversation here with Dr. Regina Nouhan, and I'm excited that Regina, I'm excited that you're here. In particular, in Outliers Ed, especially on our podcast, we like to take the time to have extraordinary individuals share their experiences leveling up in their impact, their income, and their identity. And so I'm excited to talk to you. I know you as someone who keeps finding ways to play the game and to put yourself in positions uh, to live a life that's aligned with you. And in that regard, I see you and I welcome you. Thanks for being
Thank
here.
you. Thank you, Niiamah. I'm excited to be here and I look forward to our conversation because I think there's a lot to dig into and it's going to be fun.
Yeah, I think fun is like the right word for us to start out with. Let's start off with a little bit of fun. Why don't you help outliers here get a chance to understand more about you and the game you're playing right now?
Absolutely. I'm Dr. Regina Nouhan. I'm a plastic surgeon and I retired from clinical practice right when COVID hit for various reasons. And then I started chapter two, basically. So I have been pivoting into a different direction and am doing all sorts of things that I either envisioned I might consider doing or I have discovered as new interests and new possibilities for me. And that's been just a joy. And it's been up and down. It hasn't been all easy, and I certainly didn't have everything figured out at the beginning, but I trust myself in that I will figure it out. And so I'm in that process. I've enjoyed what I've accomplished in the last, I guess, 4 years it's been now, and I look forward to the wonderful things, ahead of me.
That's awesome. Like, can you just help me here with what you can share here? Like, how long were you practicing as a plastic
Yeah,
surgeon?
yeah. Well, first of all, the lead up to becoming a practicing surgeon is a long one, kind of arduous. 4 years of college, 4 years of medical school. Then I went to a general surgery residency after that, then a plastic surgery residency. Those two together were about 6 years. And then I did an extra fellowship year to study hand and microsurgery, which can be a division of plastic surgery. And so then at that point, I was finally able to start practicing. And I did all sorts of, plastic surgery. I did all the cosmetic surgery stuff. I did a lot of reconstructive things like breast reconstruction after cancer or reconstructing after traumatic injuries, hand surgeons take care of anything from carpal tunnel to fingers cut off. I mean, I hate to say that, but it is the truth. And then, skin cancers, burns, things like that. And so a really beautiful variety of things I was able to do. And then I practiced probably about, gosh, I think it was maybe about 26 years or so, something like that. And then just shifted gears into retirement. And I like to tell people I retired from practice, not from life. So that's what I mean
Yes.
by the chapter two. So I
Yes.
started a little LLC called RMN Projects, and that's kind of the umbrella under which I am able to do the various things that I'm interested in.
Yeah, this is lovely. I appreciate a couple different things here. Um, one, you took us back to the beginning. You're like, look, so there was work before the work, right?
Yeah.
And I think I want to put that into space here, especially for us outliers. I know we're out here creating our own paths. We're making things take like we're bringing things to life that haven't been brought to life here before, at least not with the people around us. And I've been getting a growing fascination with time and preparation and
Mm.
what it actually takes for someone to be able to show up here. So I'm glad that like it was about like 15 years of like,
It's about
hey,
15 years. Yeah.
yeah. So you had like 15 years of like, you were doing the work, of course, but like doing the work before doing that, preparing, doing
Yeah.
like building in there. And I don't know if we really think about that, like if they're like, hey, I started a business last year and why isn't it already successful? I'm like,
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
is someone that like we're talking about like look at the work that went in just to
Yeah.
get there. And then
Yeah.
when you brought in like, and then I focused on the hand at the end there. I was
Yeah.
like, oh, there's so much to this to
Yeah, I
really
know.
becoming exceptional at your craft.
And you know what? I think this is interesting to point out that if I, put myself at the beginning of that 15 years and looked ahead and decided, oh, I want to do this or want to do that, 15 years of tough work is intimidating to think about. And so I have to tell you that the way I got through that was just looking down, figuratively, um, one step at a time. I made this little accomplishment, this little goal. I got through this, course or got through this year or got a da 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 da. And I've finished college. Okay, I'm going to med school, have to get in. That's arduous. And then I have to experience it and pass and do well, and that's arduous. And you just little bitty steps at a time. And that's the main way that I survived and was able to get to where I wanted to go. And I didn't always know where I was headed. When I went to med school or even decided to go to med school, it was because I thought I was going to be a psychiatrist. I wanted to be a child psychologist, actually. And my dad, who was a physician, said, you can probably do more for your patients if you become an MD, if you're a psychiatrist rather than a psychologist. And I thought, okay. And I loved math and science. And so that is what kind of prompted me to go to medical school. And then once I got into med school and was in the midst of it, I did a rotation in psychiatry. And I decided this is not for me. This is not going to be my specialty. Nothing against it, but it just wasn't right for me. And so during the third year of med school, you go through your clinical rotation. So the first couple of years of med school are book work. And that third year, you start rotating in, medicine or pathology or this or that. And so I did my surgery residency, my surgery rotation first because I wanted to get it out of the way. I thought, ooh, who'd want to be a surgeon? Blah. And I loved it. I was like, oh my God, this is the coolest. I loved the instant gratification of doing something with your hands and making something better. It was just fantastic. And so then I started looking at the different subspecialties within surgery and I discovered plastic surgery. I assumed it was all cosmetic surgery, and I knew that that wouldn't be enough to, you know, sustain me, mentally, physically, et cetera, emotionally. Um, and then I realized there's more to plastic surgery than just the cosmetic stuff. And I love the cosmetic stuff. It's very fun and it's very satisfying to help people try to achieve their goal. But there is so much more to it, and it's just a broad field. I loved it. And so that's kind of how I headed. So my point is, you don't always know where you're going when you take that first step. You have an idea, but you have to be personally flexible and give yourself some grace and realize that I may not have it all figured out at the beginning. But again, I come back to that. You just have to trust yourself that you will figure it out. It's not going to be the answer right in front of your face all the time.
It's interesting as you say this, Regina, because it makes me think about entrepreneurship and like when people talk about pivoting or persevering and such.
Right.
And the components here being like you knew the direction, you know, and you're trying to find like if I'm getting you right, like
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of like what the equivalent of like product market fit is. It's almost like practice Regina fit, you know? It's
Yeah,
like, all right,
right,
it's like
right,
I
right.
know that I'm doing this. Like I
Yeah,
like I'm moving down in this profession in some way.
yeah,
And then over time it was that calibration of saying what actually works, what is it that I want to keep quote unquote buying with my time, my energy, my
yeah.
effort, so on and so forth. I'm curious what it was like to go to your family and be like, hey, I mean, it was a while back, but like at the same time, because like to be like, I'm going to be like a psychologist, right? I'm the MD behind it, and
Well,
now
psychiatrist would be the
psychiatrist.
MD. Yeah.
Okay, I'm
Hmm.
gonna be a psychiatrist,
Hmm.
um, and then come out and be like, hey, by the way, you
Guess
know what?
what?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you remember 6 years ago or whatever when I like,
Yeah,
yeah.
right.
So, so I like we don't need to go into that part right now because I want to bring in some things. You're doing some really fun and amazing things
Yeah.
now.
But I
Yeah,
I
go ahead,
also want
please.
to say I love the word that you use, calibration. That's an
Mm.
excellent word to kind of describe it, because you really are fine tuning your future. And you do start off a little broader, and then you kind of taper and narrow that down. But you did mention my family, and my dad was an OBGYN. He's passed away now, but he once he knew I was going to medical school, he really wanted me to go into OBGYN and take over his practice. And I have to say, it kind of broke my heart to have to tell him, I'm sorry, Dad, that's really not what I want to do. But he was very supportive and, a good cheerleader for me. But that's another hurdle I had to get over, is telling my family, and are they going to be okay with it? Because there's going to be some disappointment. So,
Well, like, I appreciate elements of this here as well because, and I think this happens at all different levels. Like now that I've been playing the game more, and I still have a lot more game to play. It's like when we make these transitions, there are people who have their idea of what our identity is, and their relationship to that identity, both like the past and the future, and
yes.
making these shifts like play with that bit.
Yeah.
So it's like what's funny to me, one thing that made me smile was like like when you brought up your dad earlier, you're like, yeah, he said like I could just do more with an MD as a psychiatrist, right? And then it was like,
Yes.
hey, by the way, like you want to take over this practice now that you're here,
Yeah, exactly.
right?
Exactly. Yeah. Just get
Um,
get toe in the door.
yes, exactly. I love that there. So let's speak a bit to that component of I know there's outliers here that
Mhm.
have like their world. Um, they might be decades in their career and they're
Mhm.
now looking for that second, third, maybe even fifth chapter right now,
Yeah,
right?
sure, sure.
And they're either known for something and like people have their identity towards them in a way of the excellence that they had, or maybe they're listening to this and they've tried four different ventures before, or it
Yeah.
feels like they keep like, and they're like, can't you just pick one? So I just want to know if you can speak to anything around that from your own experience. I just think it'd be a great message for outliers to hear it.
Yeah, well, transitioning to a second chapter is daunting. All throughout my career, I was so busy and so focused on what I was doing, and I loved what I was doing. But once I realized it was time to make a switch, it was scary. And for me, and I know this is true of people in other careers, so much of your ego is wrapped up in what you do and the respect that you get from that title, if you will, or that role that you play. And to contemplate, first of all, giving that up and switching to something else where you may be just starting at the bottom or starting over is very intimidating. And it's a little sad too, because you work so hard to achieve, this level of expertise or whatever it is. But when that transition is the right thing, it's hard to figure out exactly how to sculpt it and create it. Um, there was a period of time where I was very anxious about making this transition, about retiring and doing something else in the future, because I didn't have an exact plan. My fear was, oh no, if I retire, I stop practicing, and then I go do something else or maybe do nothing, I don't have it figured out yet. So maybe I can't retire yet because I don't have it figured out what exactly that second chapter is going to look like. And so I really had to sit down with myself, if you will, and just give myself a little pep talk that, you know what? We're gonna figure it out. And you don't have to have an exact plan, exact blueprint. And in fact, even if you did, much like my experiences early on, it's probably gonna change anyway. And so why, worry yourself over that kind of strict commitment? Just trust yourself, develop your interests, and then go from there. And for me, um, I you know, the I started doing some interesting things. I actually started my own podcast about plastic surgery aimed at educating the public about plastic surgery. There's so much misinformation out there, and there is a lot of promotional stuff and things like that. And I just wanted to speak to the public like I did when I was in my practice, doing a consultation with somebody and explaining, just picking a topic, whatever it is, and explaining it to them in layman's terms so that they have a better understanding of it, whether or not they're interested in a procedure, or if they do go to see their physician for consultation, then they have a good basis to understand. So that's what I started doing. One of the various things I started. I didn't really have any experience in podcasting at all, but that's one thing I would tell people who are listening is you can sometimes take these little nuggets of talent that you don't realize you have, or that maybe on a small scale, and then cobble them together and build something out of it. I would volunteer for public radio, and I would have people tell me all the time, "Oh, you have a good radio voice." I'm like, "Really? Okay, well, that's great." But then I have the medical knowledge, and when I was retiring, I didn't want to just dump that knowledge and not do anything with it. So I decided, okay, let's combine the voice with the knowledge. And so taking these little bits of things that you have to offer and maybe putting them together to create something new that could be of benefit to other people. And that's kind of the mindset I had when I was proceeding forth with my second chapter, as you will.
So I love this here. If you had to give a title to the name of your second chapter right now, a working title, you don't have to be like, forever here. What title would you give it?
Well, that's a tough one. What I would not give it is retired from life, because
Hmm.
as I like to say, I retired from my career. I did not retire from life. Um, I would call it, new beginnings, and it's not only that, but it's also a pursuit and a personal education of my own interests and other things that I have to offer. I've discovered that I really enjoy volunteering. And so I do a lot of community volunteering now, where I didn't have the time to do that before. And I've maybe didn't even know about some of these things that I now volunteer for, because you do one thing and then it leapfrogs and you get interested in another thing, and oh wow, I didn't even know about that. Okay, I'm going to try that. And it's just personally inspiring to be able to do something for somebody else, and you get that personal satisfaction that you made a difference. And I will say that's one thing that I do tend to, when people ask me about, gosh, I'm thinking about retiring, but I'm not sure and I don't know what I'll be doing. And I tell them, whatever you decide to do, you will figure it out. But make sure that one little thing that you do is a volunteer situation. It could be just once a week, it could be once a month, but do something where you give back and you don't expect anything in return. And I tell you, that just fills your soul. And then whatever else happens in your life, you've got that grounding basis. So,
Well, I love this here. My dad retired a number of years back now. And like the way that he retired, like I look at it now, I'm like, oh, we probably should have had a better plan for you when you got done. Cause
mm,
like it was that component of like, oh, no, he retired earlier than most of his other counterparts and friends and everyone else. And so he was just like, he was just done. And he would like
yeah,
call us. I'm like, well, I'm working right now. I can't really
yeah,
talk. Like, go
I
do
can't
the things
play.
that retired people are able to do. And he's like, well, it's kind of lonely out here. Like, I don't really have
Yeah.
as much going on. So I really love this conversation here.
Well,
Yeah. Yeah.
what's interesting about that, if I may just say, um, that I did, try to take a few months and do nothing, but I found that was very uncomfortable.
Mm.
And, what I tell people is that you can't go from 100 miles an hour as a surgeon to zero. And so I have really filled that space with lots of activities and interests and things like that. And so part of the key is realizing that you do have other interests, and you have to sometimes really take the time and the effort to discover those. And they don't always appear to you right away. As I was alluding to before, sometimes you have to just start something, and then that will leapfrog into something else, or you'll discover something else, or you'll figure out, you know what, that's not going to work at all. I need to go in a new direction. And so that's helpful as well.
Yeah, I love this idea of like of just starting something. And Outliers, like right now we're talking about this in the context of retirement. We're probably going to stay in there and like new chapters and things. But and I think one of the things that's really great about this is that like I hear part of your system.
Mm.
you're part of your system here is like, well, you get started. And then you
Yes.
start like, and then
Yes.
you get into it, you get started,
Yeah.
and then you see what emerges from it. You calibrate your way through
Yeah.
it. But like first things first, get started.
Yeah. And that's scary. That's very intimidating because sometimes you don't know where to start.
Mhm.
And so, I was trying to do all this during COVID, so it wasn't like I could um, go to a studio and record, my podcast and I did a lot of Googling and YouTubing to try to figure out the equipment I needed and how do you do this and, et cetera, et cetera. But at some point you do just have to start. And if you fail, you fail. You'll figure it out or you learn from it and then you can just redirect a little bit and go from there. But you're right. If you build it, they will come, that kind of thing. And so you really just have to put a toe in the water and get going.
There's like as you're talking right now, it's getting me to think around one, just getting things started overall and
Mhm.
like putting that toe in the water. But then also just like seeing how to like leverage and build and bridge your expertise. So I'm curious for you. Uh you're doing a number of different projects now.
Mhm.
But you also built decades worth of experience in a certain way. How are you leveraging your past experience to like continue playing the game now?
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. And when I say, just get started, there is some preparation that goes with that. And you can build, if you choose, you can build on, as you say, the experience and the knowledge that you have before and take from that and factor it into what you're doing. And so for me, with the podcast, I had all this knowledge. I wanted to utilize it, and that was one way to do it. I'm also now teaching medical students how to suture properly, which is a lot of fun. I do a little suture lab for them every 2 months, and so you can use that knowledge and then find new ways to present it or let it kind of inform what you might want to do in the future as well.
I think that's for me. I think that's really an important concept. I've talked to a lot of people, and um, like they'll take on this new thing, and then I see that they kind of discount the work that they've done before. They're like,
Yeah.
like I think that there's a that tension between leaving at the top of your craft,
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
know, and then starting something new. I would really love to see like how what can we do to help outliers not essentially like I see some people just throw it away,
Yeah.
and look, I'll say
I have
to
one idea.
myself, yeah, please, Regina, go, please.
I have one idea, and this I did right at the beginning, and it was a helpful transition for me. This is before I even started the podcast. If you are at the point where you've become or you've achieved a certain level of expertise in your field, whatever it is, one thing to consider is becoming a consultant. And you can utilize that knowledge that you have. You can be helpful to some other entity. You may be able to make some money doing this. Hopefully, you can freelance kind of thing. And I did that for a plastic surgery kind of a medical company afterwards. It was just a short-lived several months, but it was a wonderful little transition where I was still using my expertise, but I didn't have the same. You know, very oppressive time schedule and commitments and things like that on a regular basis. This was a little looser, a little freer, and I was able to use that knowledge in kind of a new and mentally stimulating way, which I think is something people could consider no matter what career they are um, maybe transitioning from or moving away from.
So, Regina, hopefully you're having fun as we're playing with this
I'm
here.
having a great time.
Yeah. So, now I kind of think about like I like this idea of the transition and the new chapter that's coming or chapter two. Um, and what it's making me like what I'm thinking about right now is like how did you have to like see yourself differently? Can you talk about like the new
That's,
images of yourself as
yeah.
this show is going on?
This is an excellent point, an excellent question. Um, that was very tough.
Mhm.
Um, I again, I was talking about this before, but there is a certain ego component to being in a field for a long time. you trust that you have good knowledge in that field. Other people trust that you have good knowledge in that field. Other people respect you because of that knowledge, and that feels good. That feeds the ego, so to speak. And so if you are now going to transition to something else that is either differs from that field or is not quite the same, then there is that personal worry about, okay, how are people going to treat me? Will I get the same respect that I've been used to? Will I no longer be encountering these people who gave me personal feedback and respect because I'm in a different world now, people who don't know me? And am I going to be okay with that? And I struggled with that. That was difficult. I finally just had to come down to the, realization that I have a lot to offer as a person. I don't think I'm some great person or anything like that, but I know there is a lot in me that I can bring to the table and bring to others. And I don't need someone feeding my ego as a doctor, for me to feel like I have value. And I think it's so important to recognize that each and every one of us has value. Sometimes we don't know what that value is. It may take some time to discover that, but you have something to offer. And once you start to discover that, it really opens things up, because then there are other things you discover you have to offer, and it can really go from there. And so, that's an excellent point, though. The the way that you look at yourself does change, but I think it does so for the positive.
Yeah, it's cool. Like we were talking, and we both have a lot of like positivity to us, right?
Yes.
And I was like, all right, as we have the conversation, I want to make sure we keep things real. We talk about some of the costs that are out there, because
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of uh marketing, let's say. There's a lot of marketing around like it should look, feel effortless. It should be
Hmm.
effortless. Every single step of the way should be great. Like we're talking to you about like the transition out of it. We're just like, of course, like we just got up, landed on your feet. It must have been so
Right.
easy. That's
Not.
exactly how it is, right?
None of
Uh
this was effortless.
yeah. Do you mind
It-
like help us see? Because I have a
yeah.
thing about like
Yeah.
effort versus ease and all this stuff. Like help us
Yeah.
see a little
Yeah.
bit.
Let me talk to you about that. Let me just talk to you about how bittersweet it was to leave my practice, first of all. Again, we talked about ego, but just the the cessation or stopping of using my hands to perform a skill that would help people, and the personal satisfaction I got to see from results that came from that. That, doing my last, da 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 surgery, realizing this is the last time I'm going to do this, that's kind of soul crushing in a way. But um, going beyond that, losing the people that you interact with every day, so difficult, but bittersweet. The end point, though, is going to still be the right way to go. But getting to the preparation, we've talked about the kinds of things it took to prepare to get to my career where I was. Within my career, it wasn't just all, a bed of roses. You know, every case that I had to do, I feel like I had to prepare for, and sometimes learn new techniques and worry about the outcomes and try to get better and better so that I could provide more for my patients. And then as I was transitioning from that career to the new things that I'm doing, like even starting my podcast, it was not as simple as just get the microphone and the headphones and your laptop and go for it. And no, I had to, figure out what all this stuff was. I had to break it down and figure out how it works. I mean, how do you actually record a podcast? How do you actually get that recording to be presented and published to other people? How do you edit it? Do you do music? Do you have a little, picture icon? How do you do that? And just how do you promote it? Et cetera, et cetera. And so that all, took a lot of learning. And I can't tell you how many times I was almost literally pulling my hair out trying to figure things out for myself, um, as I was going through each step of the way. I mean, even editing something, it's so laborious. And, you learn along the way, and you make mistake after mistake after mistake, but then you finally learn to streamline that and you get better at it and better, and you try to grasp knowledge from all different directions wherever you can find it. You keep your eyes and your ears open because you're always trying to learn. But yes, it is something that requires a lot of personal commitment to stick with it, because there are so many times, whatever it is you're doing, you're gonna feel like, "This is just not worth it," you know? It's just not worth the anguish. But the end result, and especially when whatever your end product is, your end result benefits somebody else and they let you know how much that meant to them, or what a good job they thought you did, or et cetera, that is just so satisfying, and that's the kind of thing that keeps you going.
I appreciate this. Yeah, I think I love to really give like outliers like that full picture, right? Because there's something
Yeah,
exciting in what you're saying too, right? It's something
yeah,
exciting about um the part of the reason I reach out to people who have podcasts, and you in particular, is like because I know the amount of work that is involved. You know, just wake up one day and say I want to have a podcast, and then it just happens. You
oh,
know,
yeah.
and then like, and so I look at that. I'm like, this is someone who's chosen to do dedication, who's dedicated to something, who has something that they want to say
It's a
out
good
in the
word.
world. You know, there's a component of like, oh, we have to go navigate an unknown because we are not taught how to podcast. At least not when I went to school. We're
No,
not
no,
taught
no,
how to
no.
podcast. You know,
Yeah,
by the time you're 10 years old, it's not part of that curriculum, right? And so this
right.
is something that's to go out of their way on and say like, this is important to me. Let me now go and figure out all different ways to get things done. And I think there's something really awesome in that, right? I think
Mhm.
there's something really awesome in it. And to give ourselves the opportunity to continue to both build something new, but know that like whatever we choose to learn, we can learn and bring it out to life.
Yes, yes. It's a little bit of self-reliance and self-respect in a way to realize that you have the ability to learn this. It is gonna take work to learn it. It's not gonna come naturally, and there are very few people in this world that, you know, complex things come naturally to. So it really does take a commitment and dedication, as you say, and so that is something that you have to have the discipline to stick with, and I can't sit here and tell you that I had great discipline all along. No, there were times that I faltered, and there were times where I was extremely frustrated and thought, "Ugh, it's just not worth it. Why am I even doing this?" But, I would back off, give it a rest, come back the next day, 2 days, whatever, and then try again and see where my mistakes were, see what I was able to learn, and then how I could improve things, streamline things, make things more efficient, be more effective at what I was trying to do. And you can't teach somebody how to trust themselves, and how to have that dedication. But for many of us, if we realize that what we're trying to achieve is actually achievable, then it's easier, a little easier to stick with it until we get there.
I think that's it. I think that's it, Regina. We're gonna start wrapping up for today. Like, one of the things that you were talking about, like you can't really teach someone self-trust. And what was under my mind is like, oh, I wonder if I could, what would that look like, right?
Yeah, that'd be
Um,
awesome.
that'd be really great. That'd be really great. But like it's an interesting question to go and live
Yeah,
into, right? And it's
yeah.
part of like these kinds of
You know what?
experiences. Yeah,
You know what I
please.
think you have to have though is little triumphs
That's
to
it.
do that, to teach yourself self-trust. You have to have little things. Just start with your goals being small, little accomplishments, and then you start to rely on yourself that you're able to do that.
Someone had said on a podcast, they called it collecting evidences, you know,
Oh,
and they're just like it's
love that.
like I just go out of my way to go and collect evidences, and it's like I want to get hired for something. I've never done the job before. Let me now go and build a like they were a coder. They're like, let me just go build the next 30 projects I do on my own time using this
Wow.
language so that when I'm ready to get the job, they're like, well, have you ever done anything? And they're like, well, let me just show you my portfolio of this. Here goes the evidences. I feel very confident that I can deliver on it. Here goes what's here.
I
I
love that.
feel that. Yeah, I feel this element here. And so, Outliers, we're going to wrap up this conversation, but I want to make sure that as we wrap this up, Outliers, that you get the context of this as in a game that never stops.
Mm.
We were talking about this now toward like the beginning of chapter two, but we didn't, but like I let me see, Regina, you're still here, so I have to like do this as a recap later on. Would you say that some of the things you were talking about now still also applied as you were leveling up your game in chapter one?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, there were some very complex procedures I had to perform as a surgeon. There were some very difficult patient problems I had to try to find a solution for. And it can be very intimidating, and you have to realize that, you don't know all the answers. But if you take the time and you maintain the dedication, you can do the research and the learning to get to the level where you can accomplish what you're trying to. And in my career, I really had to. I mean, I can't just leave a patient hanging. I've got to be able to perform when I need to for them. I've got to be able to take care of them. And so, yes, you build this self-trust all along, and you do a little surgery and it goes well, and you do the next surgery and it goes well. And so you all along from the beginning of the career, you're amassing this collective evidence, as you say, that you can be a good surgeon and accomplish what you need to serve your patients. So absolutely.
I love that here, and I'm glad you spoke to it here because I think some of us outliers that are listening, we're starting something fresh. Some of them are
Yeah.
continuing the same, like they're on the same trajectory, but
Mhm.
starting something fresh in it or something new for them. And I just want to make sure
Yeah.
that we're calling out like this is really just a process of, I call it leveling up, right?
Yeah.
When you're
I
doing
like
like
that.
when you yeah, it's like you're playing a bigger game, we're playing a different game, but we're doing the same things, you know.
Yeah.
Well, Regina, we've come to our time here today. Outliers, I have a request of you here. The request I have is for you to join us in the one person, one conversation at a time initiative. And it's a small initiative that we have in here that I think actually has huge leverage and huge power. If you've enjoyed this conversation, please go out and share it on your socials, put it on your platforms, let the whole world know. We'd be happy to have more people benefit from this. But the one person, one conversation at a time initiative goes a lot deeper. And that goes to you finding one person in your life who you think would be deeply moved to hear this conversation, to hear what Regina has brought to the conversation, and perhaps they're getting ready for their chapter two or chapter three, and it's going to be reminded of something. My ask is that you find that one person and you let them know that you were thinking of them, and send them this episode with a reason as a gift to them. Something tells me that like in this world of like hyper growth and virality and all that stuff there, all that stuff is good. Thumbs up. Not going to say no to that. I think it's going to help a lot of people, but I think there's something that's going to help even more. Just have someone in your world know that you were thinking of them while you were listening to this, and you delivered this free gift to them just with heart and intention. All right. If you can do that, it would mean the world to me. Mhm. So, Regina, we're going to end off here. And the way that I end is to give outliers an opportunity to dive deeper with you,
Yeah.
and not only dive deeper with you, but we also share an insight that you got from this conversation. Outliers they're taken care of. They've gotten all the outsights that they need for today. This is more about what's something that you are going to walk away this from this conversation with. All right. If there's anything that's there. So, would you mind sharing that with us?
Yes. Well, to dive deeper, my podcast is called Plastic Surgery Decoded, and it's, out there. You just search it if you're interested. But as far as what I got from this, first of all, I got to connect with you, Niiamah. Just you are just a ball of warmth and positive energy that I really enjoyed connecting with. And I found that my experiences, just hearing you in terms of what you said, other interviewees have said, et cetera, that my experiences are not unique. Um, Everyone struggles a little bit. Everyone has to build that self-trust and, take baby steps along the way. I'm not alone in that, which is lovely. And I also feel personally inspired that maybe some of the things we talked about today could be helpful to someone else, and they may find just a little nugget of wisdom, if you will, that they can take forth and build from. So that's very personally satisfying. Thank you.
That's awesome. Well, always go out, listen to our podcast. Let her know how many nuggets you took away from this year.
Oh, I
Like I
love
have a
it.
feeling that we have like close the feedback loop, so to say. But just know this, Regina, like we appreciate you. Thank you for living the
Mm,
life that you live, and thank you for being in service the way that you are. We're gonna end this conversation in this way. And Outliers, I just have a request of you. Um, Until the next time we talk, go out there and be you on purpose. Journey on.